1 o'clock here on February 24th. So we're expecting the president to speak within the hour. But what are your sort of first reactions of the events that unfolded last night and also into today?
Well, it's very dangerous. We haven't had a land warfare of any kind where you've had the technology that we're going to see in the next few days employed. We fought in a one-sided warfare with the guerrillas that you saw, the insurgents in many places in the world, but nothing tank on tank as you're going to see taking place between Ukraine and the Soviets. And we don't know what else is going to happen. I mean, the challenge with all of this, and it's not anything to do with weather or terrain, it's the politics of whether it could go farther. Could it escalate? And if it escalates, then the question will be our tanks versus their tanks, the high performance aircraft we have, which are the best in the world. How do they work? Do we have enough? They've been preparing for this. I think everyone should recall that in the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, when Norm Schwarzkopf was running the show, it took us several months to get ready. He did just what Putin did on the border of the Ukraine. He got everything he needed. He put it in place. He was ready to go. And when he went like that. And that's what you're seeing right now. I mean, Putin and the Russians have been working so hard to have all their forces deployed in the right place, have the supply lines there, and not have to worry about some of these issues. And that's what they're prepared to do. Now, are they going to do it is another question. But it's a very worrisome because our supply lines are very long. And it's a long way from Fort Bragg to Romania or to Poland or to the dealing with the people on any side of the Ukraine.
So in your opinion, as we go to the next coming days, the next coming weeks, in your 40 years of experience in the U.S. Army, what do you believe is next for us as we await the president to speak?
I don't have any idea. You know, I've listened to some of my colleagues, people I've worked with, people I admire, General Petraeus, General Keane, people that have had this problem and been worried about it. I lived through and was in the Army all through the Cold War and spent many nights on the border with the Soviet Union and with the East Germans and worried about what would happen. I mean, we actually took nuclear weapons to the field during the Cold War, ready to launch if we had to. We haven't seen anything like this. So it's an entirely different circumstance. And it depends on what the national security apparatus of the United States wants to do. What's the president going to say? He has not been aggressive. There are those that would criticize him for that. He hasn't said, look, there's a line in the sand I'm drawing. He hasn't said that, and it's kind of difficult because everybody was saying, we don't really know what he's going to do, Mr. President. Well, now we know what he's going to do. And so is he going to come back at us? And what if we employ cyber warfare on him and he considers that to be an act of war between us and them? Then what do we do? What we certainly don't want to do is we've gone the 70 years without use of nuclear weapons. We don't want to see that be part of this. But he's obviously sort of put his cards on the table and said when he did the exercises in Belarus with them over how they would employ nuclear weapons on the battlefield, whether it was tabletop or in the field, I don't know, but he was overt in saying that I've got nuclear weapons with me and I'm prepared to, in my battle planning, wherever I go, to use that. So I'm not going to sleep well the next few nights. I hope it will work out. And I think that's what Putin is hoping for. But what are we going to do? How long would we keep this up? I think there's a lot of unknowns. And I guess a man named Harry Summers wrote a book on Vietnam after the war. And he said the biggest single problem was we had a marriage where the country did not know about what was involved in the marriage. And the marriage is between the people and the Congress and the military. And the Congress never really got behind and never stood and said, this is what we want you to do in warfare. The Congress has got to be part of this. We've got to involve the organization of the nation as a whole in dealing with this, because we've moved from economic sanctions and political sanctions to something that could be considerably worse.
So tying back to our original topic, of course, being weather involved in warfare, we'll get to the history part of it because I really do want to discuss that as a main point of our story as well. But we've heard for more than a month about Russia waiting until after the Olympics, Russia waiting until February and March because of frozen ground between them and Ukraine. Now, of course, you mentioned earlier on about them likely trying to use the highways as much as they can, but tying it into weather and general climate conditions, how serious of a calculation is having to wait for things like frozen ground? How do you think that played into this invasion decision?
Well, I think they're very smart. They've been working in this territory for a long time. We haven't had major exercises in Europe where we put our tanks out and seen what they could do. Our allies have not had the same level of force that we have and applied that. So he knew what he was doing. He had his commanders in the field looking at this. And again, it can change overnight. We do not know weather. I'm talking to the weatherman, but we can't predict weather. I mean, the idea is of where does the jet stream come from and how do we know where it's going to be 2 weeks from now? We don't know. And what could it bring? These atmospheric rivers that occur. All of these things are things he has to worry about. And for what was it, 50 years that we were on the border with the East Germans and the Soviets dealing with that, we worried about the same thing. If they came in, when would they come in? If we had to go in, where would we go? Are the highways going to be the right ones? What was interesting is we knew that the Russian and East German soldiers, those people in the Eastern Bloc, didn't have the resources we had. So they didn't have the highways. They wouldn't understand what it is. They didn't have the technology to operate the equipment. We've had all that and we knew what it was. But now suddenly within a maybe 6-month period, we've seen everything start to go south, and that's not good because you need to be better prepared. Again, the Schwarzkopf, he took 6 months to be prepared, and then he did what he wanted to do. It takes equally that much to get ready for it, and I'm not sure we got ready for it.